On this day in history, 1990, Beverly Hills 90210 aired its pilot episode and was met with fans who couldn't get enough. I recently found myself making conversation with a group of people whose age was unapparent to me. Somebody threw out a zinger, and I tried to capitalize on it by saying, on the next 90210. Everybody looked at me with a blank expression. That's about the time when I realized how old I was and how much I wanted to die. Live from Wattpad Nation, it's the Corner Booth, and today we're talking about how Wattpad has so much to offer its readers and writers alike, from contests, prizes, Wattpad stars to Wattpad picks, and we're talking about everything that's stamped with an orange W. We have with us this evening Shelley Burbank and Michael Estrin, and they're gonna kind of go down the rope with me, and we're gonna discuss what it is the Wattpad stars, what paid stories are all about, what the Waddies are. That the cutoff for that was the 30th of the last month, and just their experiences with these things. But before that, we're going to play a little game, and as I promised Shelley and Michael, let's see, who wants to go first?
I'd be willing to go first, if only because I think we're both equally terrified, but I'll do it.
Okay, all right, that's what I like to hear. All right, so Shelley, you're going to be watching the monitor. Michael, you're going to be turning away from yours. And okay. Here we go. All right, Shelley, you're going to try and get. Oh, hang on. See if we can make this full screen. Okay.
Good luck.
All right, Shelley. We're going to try to get Michael to guess this.
So I'm just going to read it?
What this is. Just read it off.
J hose if fat lift injure Roux Salem. Want me to go slower?
Yeah, one more time.
J hose if fat lift injure Roux Salem.
Oh man, I have no idea. I'm gonna go with like something literary because maybe that's on brand, but like the Scarlet Letter.
No.
Okay.
Say it one more time, Shelley.
Maybe if I say it faster.
Maybe.
Okay. J hose if fat lift injure Roux Salem.
I'm just so dense. I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. I don't know what it is either.
Okay, that's Jehoshaphat in Jerusalem.
Of course, as we all know. Yeah.
Yes.
So I need to look away.
No. This is your turn.
I'm looking away.
Michael's got 30 seconds.
What?
It's still Michael's turn.
Oh. Hits hobby all call few. Hits hobby all call few.
Balls and strikes?
Hits hobby all call few.
No.
Hits hobby all call few. I have no idea.
It's all because of you.
Oh, it's all because of you.
Hits hobby all call few. Okay.
That one's a little bit of a stretch. All right, Michael, let's turn the table.
Okay.
Oh man. Shelley, I did this for you to like set a very low bar, so you just hop right over it.
I'm not going to get it. I was looking at the words and I couldn't get it. So.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
All right, Noose Pay Perryport.
Newsberry Port.
Noose Pay Perryport.
Newspaper report.
Yeah, there you go.
Shelley, you've defeated me in one fell swoop. This is fantastic.
It was a fluke.
It's nicely done. Okay, here's the next one. Let's see if we can go 2 for 2. Hits Justice Dupe his game.
It's Justice Duper. It's Justice Duper game. It's Justice Duper. It's Justice Duper. It's just a stupid game.
Yeah.
And the third one is Womb Hen.
Wonder Woman.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
Okay. Ride out these dorm.
Ride out the storm. Riding out the storm.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
There you go.
Hi Yam missed her head.
I am Mr. Mystified.
Uh-huh.
Are we done?
There goes the buzzer. I am Mr. Ed.
Nice.
What is it? What is
I
Not
am
enough
Mr.
for-
Ed.
I am
Mr. Ed.
I am Mr. Ed.
Oh. I think mine were easier.
You did great.
I think
I don't
you
know,
also had the
you
virtue of like kind of knowing where we were going, but you did amazing.
Yeah, you know what the key is? You have to say it through your head. You know, you just have to say it. I don't know, whatever.
I was
You did
lost.
great. You did
Fine.
great.
Closer.
All right. Today we have with us this evening, we have Mr. Carl O'Connor. Hello. Rita is here as well as Cammie. So hello. We're going to move on to our next section of the broadcast. And we call it the entree. And I just split up questions for both panelists. But if you have something to add, please do on either side of it. This is just something to make sure that you both had something to talk about. So, Shelley, first and foremost, what is a Wattpad star?
Okay, a Wattpad star is someone that the Wattpad HQ or the people that are running Wattpad think have a chance to move forward and up their game on Wattpad. So they see people who are interacting in the community, who are posting regularly, who have worked on their to make a compelling narratives and compelling stories. And so they it's kind of like stepping up or going to the next level of Wattpad is kind of how I think of it. And once you join the STARS program, certain things are available to you that help you in your journey to kind of move you forward. They're, in other words, investing. They're investing resources in Wattpad users that they think have potential to go forward in their careers. Not that everybody can't, because everybody can, but when you reach that level, they want to help you along. So basically, that's what a star is.
Great.
Michael, I
Great.
think you're a star also, so maybe you have something to add.
Yes,
to
he
that.
is.
I think you pretty much nailed it. I would say, like, I think that there's some opportunities that I think are like available to all Wattpadders. So for instance, like, you could always submit a story, I believe, through studios, or you could be contacted and you could choose to do that. But there are other opportunities, like there are some branded content initiatives and stuff like that will sort of come to STARS, and you might be writing a little short story that's like in support of an advertising campaign. So there's a little bit of way to make some money, but I think it's kind of sort of like a way of kind of saying, like, hey, I don't want to say professional, because I think there's people who don't see it as a profession, but there's a way of sort of like, okay, I want to sort of take my writing to the next level and not have it just be about the writing, but to be a little bit more career focused.
Mm-hmm. And they do, it provides a lot of training that not everybody gets in the general population. There's a newsletter that comes out, some publishing, marketing, PR stuff, information that we share with each other. We have Discord group, so you can ask questions of people that are also stars, and it's kind of like supporting each other. It's just it's like a smaller bit of the Wattpad universe, which is getting more huge and more huge all the time.
Yeah, and it's actually through
That's great.
Other stars that I found this. So that's a big part of it too, is just finding that kind of community of people that are kind of approaching writing in the same way that you are, and then also kind of like bringing all those followers together and bringing that larger community together through stars is a big part of it.
And I've learned a lot from other stars and people I never came in contact with.
Yeah.
So when I started in 2014, Nat was one of the people that I came in contact with that I felt very fortunate, and everybody that was on the corner booth. But as Wattpad gets larger and larger, it's been hard to kind of find the people that are kind of in my same level in order to, and people who are maybe further along in their career or craft, and they can give guidance if you ask nicely. Always ask nicely.
Always ask nicely. Always.
Do this for me now.
Well, you lagged a little, Nat.
We do have a new viewer. Her name's Georgette Carignan. At first I was going to say Kerrigan, but there's an extra N in there. But hi, Georgette. Happy you're here. One thing that is unique to Shelley on this panel is that she has something called a paid story. If you'd like to talk about that.
Sure. That was a huge surprise to me. So like I mentioned, I started Wattpad in 2014. So we're talking 6 years ago. And when I first came on Wattpad, I had no idea what it was. And so I posted a flash fiction story called Disguised. And all of a sudden, all these people were like, oh, I love this. This is great. I can't wait for the next chapter. And I'm like, what next chapter? Because it was a flash fiction story. So I'm like, I think I need to do a little more research on this Wattpad thing. So I said, well, if people like it, I'll just write it. So I wrote a book. I wrote Disguise. 6 years later, Wattpad contacted me. I had gotten into the STARS program, which gives you kind of, the STARS program allows you to be looked at more by the Paid Stories program, by Wattpad Studios and Wattpad Books. So they contacted me with an email and said, we'd like to offer you to have Disguise put in our Paid Stories program. And I said, that sounds great to me. It allows readers to support the writers they like and the books they like by buying Wattpad coins, either buying, or you can watch ads and earn coins to unlock the chapters. So it does put a paywall up after a few chapters. So the writers get a little bit of compensation for their work, and readers get a chance to support the writers that they're excited about.
That's great. I love that. Do either of you use Wattpad Premium?
I do.
Yeah, too.
Mostly just I don't like ads kind of on anything. So wherever I can avoid ads, I'll do that. And for me, that's just a big draw.
Yeah.
Especially like reading it on mobile, because like personally for me, there's nothing more frustrating than like being into a chapter and then you want to know like what's the next chapter, which is why you scroll over to the next one, and then you have to it's an ad, and it's usually not something that I want to watch an ad for anyway, and I just want to read the chapter. So
I always get the ones with which pin do you have to pull in order to get to the other side without dying.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe they're just concentrated on me.
I don't mind the ads, so I don't do Wattpad Premium. I'm watching ads, that's helping Wattpad, but I do wish they had different ads besides all those apps, games.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm really old, so I'm not ever going to buy those games. Never. It's just not going to happen.
They say that they're going to get you one day. They're going to find that niche.
Sometimes those word ones, you have to figure out the word. But
that's the one.
Yeah, but I resist.
All right, Michael.
Anyway.
This is something that the season just closed for it. but results are going to be coming up soon. Why don't you tell us about the Waddies?
So the Waddies actually, I think, bills itself as like the largest internet fiction contest, and I have no reason to believe that that's not true. But if you just think of like the sheer size and number of people who are submitting, it's many authors submitting their works. This year is a little bit different. So they've made some changes. You have to have a complete story. It has to be over 50,000 words. And I know those two things were kind of a sticking point for some people because it's hard to finish a story, and two, making something that's novel length, which 50,000 words is sort of about the cutoff for what like is a novel as opposed to a novella or maybe a short story. So this is a little bit different, and it's a way to sort of recognize those. And then the judging, my understanding is like you see the categories, it's very much all genre based, right? So you're not going to be, if you wrote a mystery, you're not really going to be judged against a YA novel. That wouldn't make any sense. It wouldn't be fair. So that's really good. And then there's another thing that I think maybe people aren't aware of, which is the Waddies is a way for Wattpad to recognize really good stories, but also judge all stories in a way that's completely separate from all of the data that we have on Wattpad, right? So all of the stuff that's like your reads, and then if you go to your author dashboard, you see a little bit more and how many votes and comments you have. None of that's like relevant to the Waddies judges, and that's a really that's a really important thing in my opinion, because it allows them to basically deliver on their promise. I think if you've talked to Wattpad HQ people, they will freely tell you like, yes, there are stories that explode on there. Those are really obvious that those are sort of like big wins. Like lots of people are reading them. Go check it out. But there are stories that get 0 reads or 0 to 10 reads. So really nobody notices them, and they could be not only could they be great, but they might very well, like I have heard Wattpad HQ people say, that the next Harry Potter might very well be on the platform and only have 4 reads. And so the Waddies is a way to kind of like level that from a sort of human perspective, right? As opposed to just saying, oh, the data, the computer says one thing and your story didn't get loved by the computer. That's okay. Your stories are always for people first and foremost. And so this is a way of kind of seeing that. And I think that's what's really cool about the Waddies.
Yeah, absolutely. What have your experiences been with the awards themselves?
Twofold for me. So I won 2 Waddy awards. The first time that I won, thanks. The first time that I won, I was fairly new to Wattpad, so I didn't really know what to expect. And to be honest with you, submitting was a lot easier. This was 2016, so I think all you had to do was add a Waddies tag at the time. So it was super easy to submit. So that's why I did it. I was like, yeah, okay, why not? I found out that I won, and then it kind of was in that sort of like, what is this that I just won? Like trying to figure that all at the same time. To me, like that first year, what I really kind of, the big winning was like, yeah, more people read my story, but I think more than that, it was a kind of like, I kind of got more community out of it. I think is the big takeaway was that a lot of people actually just said like, oh, this won a Waddy. I want to check it out. I want to know more about your writing. I want to know something about like just actually some advice on writing. So I got a lot of aspiring writers who just were trying to like get better at their craft, kind of come in there, which is totally great. Like you get fans, but you also get like younger writers or newer writers, all of the above. And I think the Waddies is just kind of a way of like sort of focusing that. So that was my experience like the first time around. My experience in subsequent years was like, I've had the experience of writing something that I thought was really, really good and not winning. And that was like, oh man, I feel crushed. This thing that I didn't know about a year ago, I'm now upset that I didn't win, right? Just because you're much more, I am like much more part of a community at that point. And I'm like, oh man, like I think I did a good job. Like I think this really resonated with people. and it didn't, and that's okay. And then you just kind of keep going. And so I think it was last year that I won the second one, and that one was. I think that one was like really special in just a different way because it was something that I felt like I was part of and had won it, and that was just a really cool kind of experience. But it also was like really kind of cool to see like that your book is kind of getting like lined up with all of other books kind of in that category that have like really kind of become like a cut above or really sort of promising. And that's actually really kind of cool because you look around and you're like, oh, I don't even know if I should be in this group. And that's a very humbling but also inspiring thing. So yeah, it's been
What were the genres that you won in?
So they didn't have. I don't think they had genres in 2016. I won in like best new voice, and so the genre was more adult fiction. So it was a mystery. It's a humorous mystery novel, but very much for adults, called Not Safe for Work. And then last time around was a YA novel. So they think they had started to go more genre over the years. Mm-hmm. And then so a YA novel called Peter's Little Peter, which had a lot more reads going into the Waddies, so people kind of knew about it. So it's just sort of a night and day experience of like having one where people were like, oh, I think you're going to win a Waddie, which is like a very terrifying thing to hear because you're like, oh, the pressure, the expectation, as opposed to Not Safe for Work was like, I've never heard of you. You'll never win. And I was like, yeah, I probably won't. So just no worries.
What is a piece of advice that you give somebody that wants to get a Waddie?
So I used to say like finish your story. That's now like mandatory. So I don't know. I don't know if that's like. I don't think that's good advice anymore. Like it's still good advice for all writers. Is like finish that draft, and then because you're going to rewrite it and stuff like that. Now that's kind of required. So the piece of advice that I would give to like Wattpadders about this is, I've noticed a lot of Wattpadders are on the bubble about like, should I submit or should I not submit? In other words, they have completed stories. They meet all the requirements, but they think they shouldn't submit because I think they think that they won't win or they'll feel silly if they lose. My advice is to just get over that and like put it out there because Wattpad is really great at just letting you put your work out there generally, and the Waddies is kind of, I think, the sort of just the height of doing that. And my attitude and what I kind of always tell those people is like, you really don't know what the Waddie judges are going to make of your story. It's like I said before, the data that you have on it isn't at all determinative. So if you've done all of the hard work, enter. Like find out how you do, because you might actually be surprised. More people might read your story just because Wattpad winners and Waddies and Wattpad stars make lists that they just share people who like, oh, anyone who like entered, I'll just make a list. So there's discoverability around it, but also just like, I think just kind of having the courage to try, particularly if you've gotten that far, put it out there and find out what people have to say, because that's the only way that you're going to write a better novel the next time around too. As somebody who's written some bad novels.
And it doesn't cost anything, right?
And it doesn't cost anything.
It doesn't cost anything, and no one really even has to know that you entered, except you have your tag.
Yeah, you don't have to tell anyone.
You don't have to tell anybody. But also, you do have that tag, so if someone's looking through a list of Waddies 2020 entrants, you're going to be on that list. So that's discoverability.
Yeah.
And one of the things I wanted to say about standing out, people, sorry, go ahead.
You were working up like right to the line for this Waddie season. What was that like for you?
Well, I was going to be rewriting it anyway because I'd been contacted about it for a different reason. So I knew it needed to be rewritten. To be honest, I didn't really love this story when I wrote it the first time. And I was just going to leave it up, but then somebody showed some interest in it, so I knew I needed to rewrite it anyway. So I figured I'll just rewrite it and to get myself going, I said, I'll enter it in the Waddies. I've only entered the Waddies one other time. So that was 2 years ago. So it was a lot of pressure because I was writing, I got rid of a lot of stuff. I smushed chapters together. I rearranged the plot line so it was in a consecutive order. I had done a huge flashback and I didn't want to do that. And then I wrote 7 or 8 new chapters for it and expanded the romance storyline because it was originally a chick lit women's fiction, which doesn't happen to be one of the categories. You know, I'm a big advocate for chick lit and women's fiction. I'm trying to be a big advocate for that on Wattpad. There is a Wattpad chick lit profile, but it doesn't come, you know, under the browse list and I don't know. So anyway, I'm trying to be an advocate for it, but I knew if I needed to enter it in the Waddies, I needed to maybe put a little more romance in it. And I ended up entering it under new adult.
Okay. Is there not a romance section? Oh, okay.
There is, but it's really more of a new adult because it's centered on the character, not on the romance plot. Even though romance is a huge part of it, huge, but it's really about my main character's growth from being kind of a naive young adult starting out in her first job to overcoming some difficulties. I won't plug my own story, but it was it was
okay.
right up until the 30th. You know, I had finished putting the chapters up on the 29th, and then on the 30th, I actually filled in the form. And luckily, the summary came quite easily. And there we go.
Nice. And Michael, you had yours done a few days before the deadline. Can you kind of describe how you were putting things together and putting a bow on what you had been working on for so long?
Yeah, it was sort of. I mean, this was sort of a mad dash. I'm a little bit, just to give you some context. Like I tend to sort of like live in a world a little bit half pantser and half plotter. Like I sort of have an idea of what I'm doing, and that's the plotter. But then at a certain point, like once I've kind of found the voice, I'm off to pantsing land, and I just sort of go. So I knew when I started this, which I think was back in, I want to say May. I knew when I started the project that it was going to be kind of like tight to get it to the Waddies deadline, but I also that was a good looming kind of like thing up at the horizon to make me think, okay, well, like if you don't do your pages today, then it's just going to add up, and you are not going to make it to that deadline. And so that was a good motivator. And so it kind of just helped me, I guess, see my way through the project in a longer way. And then also, I think it kind of looking ahead a little bit to like how the Waddies operates this year and having to submit a summary, which is about 500 words, knowing that I had a little bit of extra work that I was going to have to do right at submission. And this is just the sort of like, I guess I'm good at time management generally. It just made me think, yeah, I better save a little bit of room for that. It probably wasn't enough time. I probably could have spent a couple more weeks just summarizing it. But it was kind of not so much a mad dash to the finish of the novel, but very much a mad dash to finish the application. That was my experience this year.
Okay. All right. Very nice. Very nice. Is there anything else that you all would like to talk about with the Wattpad Stars program or the Waddies themselves?
I just kind of thought I would.
You're a wealth of information for you.
I thought I'd just kind of run down a few things. Some people might be wondering, well, how do I get to be a star? And
yeah,
so I just kind of wrote it, so if anyone's interested in that, first and foremost, I think concentrate on writing a good book or writing the best book you possibly can. Work on your craft. I would say put stars and paid and studios and all that stuff as a goal in the back of your mind, but then bring it back and concentrate on writing your book and learning as much as you can about characterization and language and all those things, the whole craft element. So write the best book you can. Get reader feedback and use reader feedback to make your story stronger. Get someone to proofread it for you if you can. Then another thing you can do is get involved in the community. Now that the forums are no longer, which is unfortunate, but probably a good idea, to get rid of them. But one thing I found that helped me was to enter Wattpad contests, and not just the Watties. The Watties is the big one, but the open novella contest is a really good way to write a novella length work. And Wattpad HQ is watching that. People are reading those open novella contest entrants. So I would suggest trying that. A lot of the official Wattpad profiles, like sci-fi, fantasy, chick lit, romance, they offer contests quite frequently and prompts. Enter some of those contests. A lot of them are just flash fiction, so they don't take a long time, but people are watching, so if you want to stand out, put your work out there. Read and comment on other people's books. Well, I mean, we all know, right, that's how it works. So, and they also have some criteria. I'm going to see if I can find the criteria. One of them was you have to start a story within 365 days. You have to update every 60 days. Start a new story. Yeah, I mean, if all else fails, I think start a book that is a collection of your short stories and start posting some flash fiction. So you can keep that, because I think that's probably the computer that's finding that information. Michael,
sure, absolutely.
That's like, as far as I understand, that's sort of computer sourced, and then humans start to actually read them. So. Right.
So if you want to just check those boxes for being stars eligible, if you can't start a new novel, full-length novel every year, at least start a book that's a collection of your short stories and put some things in there. You want to be a good community member. I can't find my list. Maybe you can talk, Michael, and I'll find it.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to add something to that, which is just that, like, and this I think is just good life advice generally, is that, if there's something that you're going after, a particular goal, finding somebody who's like achieved that, and ideally somebody who's not way up here and you're way down here, but somebody who's like maybe one or two like rungs on the ladder just above you, right? So like, let's say that you've always wanted to complete a novel, but you haven't, and you find somebody who did, and it's pretty good, but like, hey, guess what? They completed it and they're willing to engage with you, and because you asked nicely, reach out to them and say, hey, like, my big problem is finishing a novel, and I see that you did that. Can you tell me how you did it, right? So like, that you could do that. You could ask, you could call up Stephen King, right? And you could ask him on Twitter that question. He's probably not going to answer it, and his answer is probably going to be way over your level, right? But like, the great thing about Wattpad is you're always going to find people who are somewhere where you're at, or maybe they're where you were, or they are where you are. Sorry, I'm getting it wrong. They're just a little bit ahead of you, right? And so finding those kinds of connections and saying, how do I get just a little bit better at this one thing is a big deal. And then, like, to Shelley's point, that open novella contest is huge. It's a really, really good stepping stone if you want to write a novel, because, a novella is it's sort of that in-between short story and novel, so you can go a little bit bigger. If you go way big, then congratulations, you have a novel. And if you need to pare it back because it's too hard, or something's not working out, or it just seems the right size for that story, you can fall back to that shorter form, and it's much more manageable. And as anyone who's ever rewritten a novel can tell you, rewriting something that's only 30,000 words is much easier than something that's 90,000 words. So enter all of those contests that appeal to you, but like specifically the open novella contest is just such a great stepping stone.
Where do they put that at, or post that information for you? Do they have their own page?
So they did it for the first time, I think, last year. So it started.
2 years.
It was 2 years running.
Yep.
Yeah. So it starts, I think, like when the wadis are over, right? So we kind of shift into the next gear, and so you'll see a lot about it in the site. My guess is probably after the wadis are announced, you'll see the next open novella contest, and then my understanding is that there are also lots of prompts. It's prompt driven, I believe.
You have to pick a prompt.
You have to pick a prompt, which would also be a really good way to start.
Yes.
Yeah. So I highly recommend the open novella contest if you've never finished a novel and you want to do that. This is a really, really great way to get rolling.
And it's fun because so many people are involved, and it's not as big as the Waddies, you know, and it's more interactive. Yeah,
it's a little bit like Nano in that regard. Like it's kind of the best of Nano and then kind of like a little bit of Waddies thrown in, and it's got a lot of great things going on for it.
I loved it. When I entered it, I was going to enter it. I did enter it. It was for another book, and it ended up getting way too long, so I had to drop out. So I ended up writing a novel, but that's the one year I entered the Waddies, and that was the year in the Waddies where they had a long list and a short list.
Yeah.
So the open novella contest novel ended up in the short list for the Waddies. So it was
cool.
I guess what I'm saying is it's like to your point, you know, if you go over the amount and you don't win the open novella contest because it went too long, you might find yourself with a really good book.
You might find yourself with a Waddie winner.
You might. I didn't.
Yeah. Anything can happen, but the point is I think. But I think the point that like Shelley and I are both kind of making, right, is like if you find a way to start, wherever that's going to go is going to be a good thing, and finishing it, whether it turns out to be a short story, novella, or novel, it's all good because that gets you kind of like in the game and moving forward.
And you get more readers.
And more readers.
Because people who are entering the contest want to see what the competition is.
Yes.
So I think people tend to read each other's books more on that contest. So yeah, I did find the other criteria.
Okay.
The only one I didn't, I might have actually gotten, you have to have one narrative story of at least 50,000 words completed.
Okay.
And then the other thing is, if you have all that and you feel like people aren't finding you, the Wattpad people aren't finding you, you can go to wattpad.com/writers/opportunities/stars. And there is a form you can fill out saying, please take a look at me.
So yeah, right. Make it kind of curate it that way.
Yeah, they're not necessarily going to give you an answer. It's not that kind of a job application, but it does get your name in front of people, so they'll at least take a look at your profile and your work.
Okay.
And it might be a yes or no, but at least it's something. So, do make sure you have all the criteria. One narrative story, 50K words completed. Start one story in the last 365 days. Have updated that story within the last 3 months. Log on to
Did we freeze?
I think Shelley froze.
Oh.
She was on such a roll.
Sorry.
There you go. All right, Shelley, we didn't get the last 2 or 3 points.
Just update your story within 3 months, in the last 3 months, and log on to Wattpad in the last 60 days. Okay. So I was just saying, if you want to be a star, don't just log on once every 60 days. try to log on and be an active member of the Wattpad community. if you want to move forward. If you want to make Wattpad like your launching
which
pad,
is important, definitely important. Yeah.
I think of
And,
Wattpad as my primary. Go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just saying that especially if you're reading other people's work that you've always wanted to, you just haven't had the time or whatever, just put all of that away and just give yourself some time to at least start a story and give, some sort of feedback that's besides awesome or this is great. I think that everybody that is a Wattpadder enjoys engagement, and the best way to do that is to have something that's open-ended, and that way you can actually that's my favorite thing about Wattpad is that you can actually have a conversation with somebody who's written something great.
Yes.
So Carl brought up something that was kicked around just in conversation not too long ago. It was about Nano, how it's starting next month, and he says, "Yay!" So, how do you two feel about that? With everything coming up with the novella contests and whatnot, are you going to try to participate in it this year?
I don't know if I'm going to make it this year. I should say that I'm a big fan of Nano as a contest. I think the best thing about it is, one, it gets people writing, but two, I think it also frees up authors to experiment and try something that's a little bit of a different genre for them, or a different voice, or just something that's off. And so for me, to believe it or not, the book that I won that I won the Waddies Award for, Peter's Little Peter, was a Nano project, and I never considered writing YA until then. I had an idea, obviously, and I thought, oh well, I don't know that community needs me to write any books. I really had a lot of doubt about whether I should be writing that at all. But I thought, well, Nano is kind of a really low stakes way of experimenting, and just give it a go, because, for like a month I could be a YA writer, and it turns out like if it didn't speak to anybody, I could just like pretend that it never happened. And that would have been totally fine with that. And that would have been just great. I could have gone back to my other stuff, totally fine. So it was just like a nice little break. The only thing that I'll say about the Nano experience is, like, I think you kind of, if you're writing regularly and you're kind of like turning out books in different story lengths and stuff like that, then you want to be mindful of like when Nano starts, because I think for a lot of us, the hard part is kind of like, are you ready to start Nano on November 1st, or are you like in the middle of rewrites on a project or something like that? Which I think I will probably be in the middle of starting, hopefully trying to get a new book going, which might be a good opportunity, but it also might not be the time to just like completely pants it for a month and see what happens. So probably not for this year, but it's always there, and that's what's so cool.
What about you, Shelley?
I did Nano 1 year, like a long time ago. I think I did okay, but I don't know. I guess I don't need it so much.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun, because everyone's involved in it. It's kind of like the open novella contest in that regard. But I probably won't do it. I have a rewrite I'm going to be starting anyway. I actually started it before I decided to rewrite this last one. So I need to get back to that. Can I go a little off topic and ask Michael something?
Sure. I mean,
Yeah. So different for you writing YA versus, adult fiction. Like what did you have to keep in mind, or because I have an idea for a YA novel. I've never really wanted to write one, but I have an idea.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I could pull it off, and I don't read YA all that often, which is a no-no. If you want to write something, you should read it. Did you?
So full disclosure, I didn't read a lot of YA novels, but what I did realize, so to give you a little bit of background, so I went to I think it was WatCon in New York. I was able to go to, and I went just kind of because I thought I was going to be somewhere else at one of the breakout rooms, but I ended up in the YA one, and I was listening to a panel of I think 5 Wattpad, just really, really big YA authors who were speaking, and it was just so inspiring. But one of the things that one of them said to me, or one of them that said that like really resonated with me, was she was talking about how she was just such a big fan of like the John Hughes movies, but how she wanted to kind of write them her own way as books, obviously, but update them for more modern audiences. And kind of like, if you're familiar with the John Hughes movies, they're really great and they're wonderful, but maybe on a later viewing, there's some things where you're like, they're pretty cringy. You should totally check out Molly Ringwald's essay on that. It's phenomenal. But like putting that aside, it kind of was sort of for me, like the bell that kind of went off was like, I grew up watching these movies. I'm really well versed in the narratives just from being a teenager and having watched all that content way back when, and I still watch these movies now sometimes, and saying, oh, well, like, do I have anything that's like different to say, right? Like, do I have a point of view on it? And it turns out that I did, and so I would just say to you, Shelley, like, give it a go, right? Like, because you probably do have a point of view on it, and then what's so interesting about YA is like, there's this assumption that it's like only for young readers, and it's not. There's adult readers, and then there's a young reader, and they're very different, right? But like, I kind of think that like half of the audience is sort of like currently trying to figure out how to survive high school, and then the rest of us are just dealing with like whatever that high school experience was that kind of stays with us, right. And just saying, oh man, I just want to, I'm so glad it's over, but I want to like say something about it for the world. And so I totally urge you to like just give it a shot. Okay, maybe I will. It's my fault if you do it. I'll blame you. It's Michael's fault. Great thing. I just kind of wonder about tone and getting the voices right. I have a 20-year-old in my house, but it's not. Like, things change so quickly in the teen world. Yeah. Their apps and their language, their, memes. I mean, one thing I'll say too, I think the advantage of writing YA on Wattpad is, it's I don't know what the statistics are, but there's a huge young audience, right? So there's an audience of people who read YA that's big. And then there's just also a big audience of actual teenagers who may or may not be reading YA. Right. Either one of those can kind of like come through the door and start reading your story. And there's generally, because there's like a lot of them, they're not shy. Right. And so they will tell you, and they've told me and it's not a big deal, but they've like, oh man, that's over the line. Or no kid would ever say that, or like things like that. And that's totally fine. It's good feedback, but I think like by and large with YA, you're almost always writing about like more mature themes are definitely a big part of it. So like you are tackling all the same themes of an adult novel. You're just kind of making it more accessible. And when it feels like it's not as accessible, or you maybe push a line, readers will let you know on Wattpad for sure. So, and usually politely, in my experience. So I did have, back in the day, I did have a 13-year-old write to me or comment on my page and said, "What are you doing here? Wattpad isn't for adults." That happens too. Wattpad's not for adults. You shouldn't even be here. I was like, well, what are you doing here? You should be doing your homework. You should I didn't say anything. But it did make me laugh.
Smart. It's very smart.
So if you're that 13-year-old is now 18 and you're watching this, I remember. Another thing I always.
Oh no! I was just gonna say it was kind of funny. I've had that comment of no kid would ever say that. And sometimes I have to like roll around with that in my head because I grew up with movies like Home Alone and Home Alone 2, and that he's a kid and he says some pretty outlandish stuff. Not only that, but you think about everybody that's in what is it, Fast Times at Ridgemont High. That was one where it was just like those kids would say anything. So, and I don't know. You think about that, and then you also think about like things that are current, like Stranger Things. Those kids, they're kids, and they're still getting away with being able to communicate rather effectively.
Well, think about Gossip Girl. I mean, that TV show. I mean, those were kids that were just like adults. I mean, there was nothing really kid-like about them except their age.
I would also say, like,
True.
I just think on Wattpad, you know, you don't, as an author, you don't have to worry about that as much. Like, obviously, if it's going to be super mature, market mature, so that readers get a heads up. But it's not the same as trying to like fit the definition of what's acceptable for a teen audience as defined by a publisher, which is they're going to have really specific rules. They're going to have a basically like a style guide. They're going to tell you a lot of things that like will and won't fly. And that's them, then that's totally cool. But what's happening on Wattpad is a little bit more freewheeling, and I think that's advantage for the whole community and the writer as well. But just market more mature if you're going to go more mature.
I have no intention of going mature.
Yeah, totally.
No intention of that. Well, maybe a little.
Maybe a little.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna round this discussion off. Is there anything that you'd like to add, Shelley?
No, I think I've talked enough.
All right, Michael.
I'm good.
All right. Well, we thank you for joining us this evening. We're gonna be around, same channel, same time, and until then, keep riding the good fight, and we will see you then. Good night, guys.
Wait,
Good night, guys.
I do have a shout out.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, absolutely. We need to do that.
Yeah. So do I just tell you who it is?
Yes.
Okay. Her name is Vera Loy, and she goes by @Elveloy, ELVELOY. And she also has another profile @Vera Loy, VERLOY. And Vera's been an encouragement to me almost from the beginning that I got onto Wattpad. She's a Wattpad ambassador, and she has over 100 stories on Wattpad right now. And she writes LGBTQ romance and sci-fi and historical. And she's a fabulous writer and a great person.
Michael, did you have anybody you'd like to give a shout out to?
I did. So first, Shelley, thanks for reminding us about the shout outs, because I had to pull it up myself as well. I want to give a shout out to the, so it's Nick and Keely who do they both work for Wattpad HQ, and they do the Road to the Waddies podcast. And it's just excellent. And I know that the Waddies has closed for submissions, but there will be another Waddies. And so that podcast is there. It's got just a ton of great information. I learned things even having like won the Waddies that I just didn't know. So it was great hearing from them. They really break it down like topic by topic. Go find that podcast. It's called Road to the Waddies. Subscribe to it because you'll get like updates whenever they update. But just go through all the back episodes just because there's just a ton of good advice on everything from how to write your novel to like how to do metadata and tagging for your novel to like the contest rules and how that all works. So there's just literally, it's an abundance of good information by people who know what they're talking about.
And lastly, do either of you have one last piece of advice for the audience out there?
I have a quote from James Scott Bell. And I love this quote, and I just found it this year, and it just resonated with me. And it goes, "If you love to write, why would you ever stop? If writing doesn't make a living for you, do it because you love it. Do what you can with it." And I just love that. Do what you can with it. Because it just
great.
Just do what you can. It's just great. It's just a great thing. It's freeing.
Love it. Michael?
I totally love that. I'm gonna like steal a little bit of that and just to say, for anyone who's out there, authors on Wattpad, especially, like, write the next thing, right? Like keep going, because everything that you write, one, you kind of learning how to write that specific story because that story has a lot to teach you, but also you're learning a lot about storytelling generally. So, you know, it's really important that you finish something, and then it's really important that you rewrite. But then the thing that we don't talk a lot about is the third part of that, for my money, and that is writing the next thing, right? And so you're going to learn a lot writing your first novel, and then you're going to learn a lot more rewriting it. And then you're going to take all of that and you're say, like, man, I wish I knew that from the go. And the good news is like you can't go back in time, but you can go forward, right? And so you can take all of that information and bring it into like the second book that you choose to write, and you will be such a better, much stronger writer. I can guarantee. Like, if you finish it, if you rewrite it, you are going to be a stronger writer. And so when you go into book 2, you're the thing that's different, and you're going to be much better at it. So I highly encourage people, write the next thing.
Excellent. I love it. All right. Let's try this again. We're going to talk to you next week, and we'll see you then. So bye.
Bye.
All right.